Hi, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a couple of minutes. So everybody just hang tight. We'll give just a couple more minutes for people to get here in case they're running a second or two late. So stick around and we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to this month's dual-sponsored Intra-Promote and Hennepin Marketing webinar. For our April presentation, we're going to be exploring advanced PPC and SEO campaign diagnostics. My name is Kayla Kurtz, and I'm the paid search consultant at Hennepin Marketing, as well as a writer for PPC Hero. Eric, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Dafford, and I'm the president of Intra-Promote, and we are thrilled to once again be presenting this webinar with Hennepin today.
Great. All right. So in our previous presentations, we've been really focused mostly on what you're doing with PPC and or SEO and those campaigns really right now. So we've gotten you here. And what we want to do now is get you to this next place. So this month, we're going to really talk about those long-term type data and diagnostics that we really think you need to be looking at for your campaigns in either medium. Now, I think Eric and I both agree that it's really important to emphasize this is certainly not an exhaustive list of the metrics that are going to be ultimately most important for your accounts in that long-term picture. These are just some that we've picked up that frequently show up across most accounts, if not all of them, and that we've had a lot of really hands-on experience with tracking long-term with clients that have been with us for a really long time. All right, so the three main points we're really going to talk about for this month. The first is we're going to take a look at which metrics you should be tracking long-term in either your PPC or SEO campaigns. Then we're going to discuss how using that data and other metrics that we've discussed in months previous, how you can make projections on future performance given that current and also long-term data that you've tracked historically. And then finally, we're going to take a few moments to explain how you can really take some time to understand where PPC and SEO fall in your brand's total marketing picture. And just so you guys know, we are definitely going to have some time at the end for questions. We can take those within the actual webinar chat session screen for sure. But you can also use hashtag PPC SEO to send us questions via Twitter. So definitely take advantage of both of those. And at the end, we'll go through as many questions as we've got time for, and then the rest we'll handle on the blogs and such with follow-up afterwards. So, all right, that covers the main topics. Let's go ahead and we'll jump in. I get to talk a lot at everybody for this first part. So, all right, so on the PPC side, I'm going to specifically discuss 4 metrics that, again, I think are really important to track long-term for your paid search accounts. Again, keep in mind there are going to be some ancillary metrics, absolutely, that aren't on this list and that are crucially important to your particular account. You want to make sure you're tracking those over time as well. But these are just ones that, again, I see that are on most accounts and are applicable really across the board. So we're going to take a look at market share, quality scores, return on ad spend, and average cost per click. So in terms of market share, you need to be tracking two things. First, how large is the market for your vertical, period? How many searches are done per month based around your service or product vertical? How many impressions are there available on those searches? And then the second is going to be how much of that market you're eligible for, and then pulling down into your funnel via PPC. I thought that this little pie clip art was perfect, because that, you imagine that slice of that pie as the portion of the market share that you are available to bring down because of the keywords you're bidding on and how competitive you are from a quality score standpoint. But odds are you're not taking in even that 100% full piece that you could be. You're probably only peeling back that top layer. For whatever the case may be, your quality scores aren't competitive enough, your budget isn't allowing you to get up in that top page to really bring in those clicks. But this is a really great picture example of the whole pie is there, the whole market is there. You're only going to be able to pull down a portion of it, right? You're going to have competitors, but then how much of even your portion have you been taking down over time, and are you increasing that? I know that impression share via AdWords and a lot of the other engines, they really get a lot of flack due to how inaccurate they may be. However, if you're accepting that the numbers you're looking at are maybe not perfect to begin with, you can still use those to track performance increases, right? So it may not be perfect, but it's still something to track. It's better than nothing. Additionally, the change in impression share data being split within the interface itself among search and display traffic has made it slightly more accurate and usable from an account manager standpoint as well. So keep that in mind and try to put those sort of old stories about how accurate impression share really can be, and try to track that alongside a lot of your other metrics long term. I put average cost per click on this same slide because it kind of goes along with that market share to a certain degree, in that I really encourage you to look at this metric more frequently than you could be currently, and track it on a longer term basis, because it can be really a great indicator of large changes in competition or within the vertical itself that are easy to overlook. We've got a client on board right now that has been continually seeing a creep up in cost per click for the last year. It's proven really hard to counteract. No increase in quality score seems to be able to make it more competitive. Lots of conversion rate optimization work all the way through to try to maybe bring it down that way. And it's really just, it's not been working. So the truth of it is, it's just a more competitive market this year than it was last, and we've got to focus on other things to counteract it. That does not mean that average cost per click stops getting tracked. It stops getting paid attention to. It's still very important. It's just that realizing the competition is going to drive that up as we go. As long as we're making sure that it's not creeping up too much against purposeful things that we're doing with it, then that's something that is beneficial to look at. All right, so next up is quality scores, and this is a big one for long-term tracking and really how you do this tracking, because the data in the interface is going to go away. And little Ralph, I thought, was a pretty cute example of this. But quality scores that you've got in your account, the historical data isn't stored within the account itself. So, in other words, if you've got a keyword that today has a quality score of 5, and then you check your all-time quality score of that keyword in a few months, and you've moved it up to a 7 through various optimization methods, you're not going to be able to see a report that ever shows that keyword being at a 5. So you need to make sure you pull these quality score numbers out on a lot of different levels from your accounts. Frequently, I would say probably monthly, so that you can look back on if you're doing work specifically towards your quality scores. Are you making progress? And where you're not making progress, what else could you do to improve those metrics? So keeping in mind that these numbers are definitely going to go away. Make sure you're downloading them frequently, and how frequently is going to be dependent on the amount of traffic that you get in your individual account, of course. All right, and then my last one before I kick it over to Eric is return on ad spend, and this is probably the biggest one. Whether your overall purpose is branding, revenue, lead volume, some deeper ultimate performance metric that's very specific to your vertical, tracking what you're getting back out of your PPC accounts is crucial, especially on an agency standpoint. We can't make any sort of argument to our clients about why we exist and why we do the work that we do if we can't show this return on ad spend consistently being in a positive manner. So, I'm sure you're looking at this right now. You probably just reported this number in the last 3 weeks or so to a client or to your in-house team. But when was the last time that you looked back at where you were on a return on ad spend level this time last year? And then using that performance change, where do you want to be this time next year? At the clip that you're moving forward, are you going to be able to get to that goal? If not, you've got to make some changes now, not 6 months down the road to try to hit that ultimate goal. So make sure that this is something that you ultimately check in with at least once a quarter and see where the thorough changes have been, and keep in mind, of course, seasonality and things like that. And then this is going to be a great one to use for projections, and I'll go into more projection stuff later, but I think it's Eric's turn to talk at everybody for a bit. So Eric, I'll kick it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Kayla. I want to reiterate Kayla's earlier point that we consider these webinars sort of a conversation that's ongoing. And one of the things when we came up with this topic originally on our calendar, we had all these ideas, and then we sort of thought, we came back to each other and said, you know what, if we do this, it's going to be about 15 hours long. And so we said, okay, what are we going to do in this hour that people might not have been thinking of, that is going to be very helpful in the short term and is going to give them stuff to think about in the in the long term as well. So what I'm going to talk about on the SEO side, and you'll keep seeing, you've probably seen throughout these webinars, we've been doing these webinars with Hannafin since the mid-1970s, and every time we get this sort of look that SEO and PPC are sort of evil twins of each other. There's a lot of the same goals that we pursue, but we go about them in different ways. So one of the things that I'm going to talk about first is the true diagnostics process before we even get into sort of analytical metrics that we want to be looking at. When it comes to SEO and PPC, neither one of them is easy to pull off well. It takes a great deal of pain and suffering to get the campaigns where you want them to be. But with SEO, it's a little bit different because there are literally so many more things that can go wrong that sometimes a big part of the campaign process is troubleshooting and forensic research about what exactly is going on here. Where is the problem with what I'm trying to do? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Something else I'm going to talk about is one of the metrics that we look at year over year, month over month with clients, and that is how broad the keyword the keyword draw or the keyword net is. It's not just about how much traffic came in on these trophy terms, but it's about how many different phrases brought traffic, and we're going to talk about that. And finally, one of the topics that's really important for the next couple of years, I think, is trying to assign value to what we call dark traffic, that big chunk of your online channel referral pie, and we'll go back to Kayla's analogy of the pie, that we can't attribute to anything. Okay, I think identifying where that traffic is coming from and assigning credit where it's due is going to be one of the big victories for people who are paying attention to that. In the next slide, I'm going to start off with our diagnostics process, and at IP we sort of live and breathe by an acronym called CIRTA, C-I-R-T-A, and the reason we came up with this was we had to sort of plot on a linear graph all the different things that could go wrong during an organic crawling process, all the way from crawling all the way to the sale at the end of the sales process on the site. And we realized that a lot of times people are assigning problems to things that really didn't cause the problem in the first place. So when I ask, when are SEO diagnostics a waste of your time? The answer is, on the next slide, when they're founded on junk data. And Kayla, you see what I did there? Created a little bit of junk data that gave us an artificial representation of what we thought we were looking at.
That's great.
Now, like I said, the CIRTA process stands for crawling, indexing, ranking, traffic, and action. And to us, those are the core linear components in the process between an engine noticing your content and the user finally doing something about it that you want them to do. For example, we'll run into a lot of problems where, a client's site isn't ranking right. They say, oh, I should be #1 for this. Look at the garbage on the results page for this. And they'll say, oh, I think I need more copy, or I think I need a keyword density that's increased, or I need a new title tag. And a lot of times maybe that would help, but a lot of times, even more times, the problem lies somewhere in the process before this even happens. A couple of anecdotes about that. We were working with an agency who came to us and said, hey, we have this really big client. If you search for them, only a deep page is coming up. We think we were penalized. We don't have any idea what's going on. Can you take a look at this? And so we sort of dove in for a few days, and I just, one of the first things I'll ask for is a big history of what's been going on. And I said, if we're penalized, what do you think it could be for? And they said, well, we did some affiliate marketing work. We drove some links to some deep pages through an affiliate push. We don't think that's it, but we don't know what else to do. So we looked at that, and the links, they weren't great links, but they didn't look spammy. And so we were really sort of at a loss until we got access to their webmaster tools, and we realized that their robots.txt, which we thought just didn't exist, which would be a not optimal, but an acceptable condition, wasn't actually giving a 404 error, but it was giving a 500 error, which means server error. And there's a giant difference in how Google will react to your site if it gets a 404 response code for your robots.txt, or it gets a 500. A 500 basically says to Google, stop crawling my site, and that's exactly what Google did. And so once we figured that out and we uploaded a new robots file, all that went away, and it wasn't the affiliate links, and it wasn't the site architecture, and it wasn't the body copy. It was something that happens way earlier in the process. So my takeaway from that is be very, very sure that you've researched every possible thing that could go wrong, and don't let your eyes deceive you, because when we looked at the robots.txt file, we got the error page that looked exactly like a 404, but it wasn't a 404. It wasn't until we ran it through a header checker and saw the crawling rates plummet on webmaster tools that we realized this is what's going on. So that's why we recommend all the time, make sure you're reacting to the proper variable and you're not deceived by what appears to be going on. Okay, next I want to talk a little bit about the breadth of your keywords. And this on the left, you'll see a very familiar site, which is just the Google Analytics keyword report. Here's the the top 15 keywords. Here's how many visits came in. Now, I'm not concerned with that right column, and that's one of the reasons I blurred that out. I don't care necessarily in this particular mindset how many visits came from parathyroid adenoma or familiar adenomatous polyposis. I'm concerned more with the numbers in the left column. It says 1 through 15, but it's 1 through 15 out of how many, okay? Year over year, we want to see that list grow. And that's one of our benchmarks for how successfully we're able to add new content, or how successfully we're able to help clients add new content to their site. Is the content that we're adding actually bringing traffic? Now, this has been complicated somewhat by Google's keyword unavailable phenomenon, where if the search process takes place over a secure server, which more and more of them do, then we're not going to get an associated keyword. So what we're moving toward is a situation where we are being able to segment audiences based on, have they landed from organic search on a deep page, the home page, how many different landing pages were there, how many different visits per landing page. So that to us is a suitable substitute for the data we used to have that Google is slowly taking away. Moving on to the next item, dark traffic. Now, this is also known as dark social, and the phrase dark social came about, I think, last fall when the Atlantic Monthly, I believe, took a really close look at its traffic. Now, on the left, my left graph here is a graph a pie graph right out of Google Analytics, and it's probably really familiar to you. The blue is search traffic, and hooray, it's number one there. Referral traffic, that is referral from any site that's not a search site, basically, is in the green. But look, a quarter of the traffic is this quote-unquote direct traffic. And direct is really a euphemism for we don't know where it came from, okay? So, you know, analytics packages like Omniture or Google Analytics will say, well, it's type-in traffic, meaning that they just go to the URL bar in your browser and start typing, you know, yahoo.com or google.com or hennepinmarketing.com, etc. And that's one of the ways they get there, okay? And that's true. The other one is bookmarking, okay? If a site is bookmarked, it does not have a referrer behind it, all right? So again, those are two legitimate ways that people can come to your site without a referral URL. And basically all this direct traffic, really, you know, to be rephrased, is just traffic without a referral URL. We don't know who sent it. Now, what the Atlantic realized, that a lot of this direct traffic is not type-in traffic, and a lot of it's not bookmark traffic. A lot of it is what they'll call dark social, which is URLs that get passed along by various ways. Maybe they're texted to one another, maybe they're emailed to one another, maybe they are instant messaged to one another. But regardless, you know, all these URLs are getting passed along through these various sort of enigmatic methods, and they're not being able to attribute that to anything. So they took a lot of time and did a lot of data parsing and came up with the graph on the right, which is, you know, they basically were able to attribute about 45% of that direct traffic to various social campaigns. And that's great, but that still leaves over half of the dark social that's not attributable. So really the push here is to say, look, we got to figure out who gets credit for this traffic, because let's say that 56% of dark social traffic actually really converted well. Well, you know, of all the, you know, the half dozen or 8 or 10 different online campaigns that you have running, where should the credit go? And that's why it's so very important to be able to attribute this dark traffic to various mechanisms that you have going on right now. Because if it's going really well, you want to be able to do more of it. If it's not going really well, you want to be able to sort of jettison that campaign and put your focus where something else is. You know, the old advertising joke is, I know that half my advertising budget is being wasted, I just don't know which half. And that really applies here. We got to figure out which chunk of stuff is working and which chunk isn't, so we can act on that. So what we're recommending is, you know, when you push something out over Facebook, tag it. When you push something out over PPC, of course, you know, as Hannepin will tell you, any qualified PPC campaign is going to have tagged URLs. But Twitter, LinkedIn, an email campaign, email links, so many people are not tagging those, so that when, you know, your newsletter stuff clicks, you know, newsletter readers click over to your site, unless you've tagged that URL somehow, it's not being attributed to your email marketing campaign. So that's absolutely critical. You know, there's a small percent of search referrers that actually get dumped into that bucket, but it's only for advanced users when they can actually turn off referrers in their browser settings. That's a fairly minuscule amount, so we don't really think much of it is search traffic, but the importance of how these channels are working together now, which we'll talk about in the wrap-up. You know, PPC relies on SEO. SEO relies on PPC. Both of them rely on social, and in turn, social relies on them. It's becoming very important to know how these different channels are interacting with each other, and when we do, we have a much clearer picture of what's working and what's not. Those are the metrics long-term that I have recommended looking at, and now Kayla is going to talk about some additional things to watch.
Great. So now we want to move into, you know, once we've got those short and long-term data points, how do we use those to track performance and project performance as well? You know, into the future just a little. So, you know, the thing about the data, specifically in PPC, that I really find exciting is that when and if you've got enough of it, you could literally make yourself busy for hours upon hours, diving into the different segments of, you know, all the different ways to throw this data into pivot tables and make determinations about where you're winning, where you're losing. We are a little bit pivot table addicted over here at Hannafin, so there's it seems to be an endless world of how can I compare this data to this data and make a new decision about my account. So you can make yourself really, really busy, but if you've got to sit down and decide, you know, how much time you've got, and using that time, you know, what projections can you make to truly make some long-term decisions about what you're doing in your account. So, you know, be careful how far into this you get, and you also have to consider, you know, the longer term you're making these projections, the more likely there are going to be outside factors that are going to come in and change that data and where it was projecting to. You know, seasonality, competition coming in and out of the market, customer retention rates for your particular brand or product, overall life cycles of a customer for your brand or product, changes that you have to make necessary on the back end to handle this increase in performance. You know, if you're working on an e-commerce site, and we actually had this happen with one of our clients. We had a product that got really popular really quickly, and we sold through 2 years worth of inventory in a month. These are not the kinds of things you necessarily expect to do. It was great, but we had to peel things back a little bit and wait to get that additional you get the additional product in the warehouse. So you have to keep all of those things in mind as you make these projections. You may not necessarily be able to continue forward at the exact clip you're working at now. There are things that are going to interfere, but if you've got the data, run some projections, take those variables into account. You know, assume a certain churn rate in what you're doing is going to be applicable, and then, you know, see how close you appear to be getting to your ultimate goal a year from now, or whatever the case may be. You know, I encourage you to run projections, you know, based on your weekly data up to monthly. You know, look at things on a quarterly basis, and then absolutely look where you'd be again this time next year. I feel like I drop that phrase a lot, but it's really important to look long term, you know. When considering this overall sustainability of either PPC or SEO, you've got to look long term, or you're certainly short-sighting yourself. And then, you know, of course, the big takeaway here is absolutely going to be to log these projections and revisit them. So even if this is a number that you track on a quarterly basis, check in on that number monthly and see how you're, you know, how close you're getting to getting where you expected to be 3 months ago. This is something that I feel like a lot of people take the time to write the numbers down and do the projections, and then they don't go back to revisit them until 3 days before those projections are kind of coming up due. You know, so check in back with all this data yourself, and share this information with your team if you're working in-house. Share this information with your client if you're working on the agency side, so that everybody knows where the goals are and where everything is headed, and everyone can contribute as need be. So what I really wanted to go through is this is just an example of how we do projections here at Hannafin. So using basically the previous 7 days worth of data, and then also how many days are left in the month compared to where we've performed so far this month. Where are we projecting to be when this month is over? And then there are, of course, tabs and areas of the spreadsheet that you can't see that have the deeper metrics that are, you know, more where our goals compared to where these projections are coming at. What is their total return on ad spend going to come out to be, you know, sales and revenue and things like that. But these are the kinds of, you know, setting up this, it's a really easy document to update 2-3 times a week, so that you can see how your performance is trending. So this is just an example. Again, you know, as Eric and I have said in months previous and again today multiple times, there are lots of different ways to do these projections and calculations for your particular accounts, the metrics that are important to you. Finding a method that does work and that allows you to pull this data frequently is what's really ultimately important. So let Eric go ahead and discuss a little bit about performance and projections from an SEO standpoint.
Right on. Okay, so one of the very hardest things that we do on the SEO side is try to project what's going to happen in a campaign. And there are a number of reasons for that. One is that there are just so many variables that we don't control. Is Google going to run an update soon? Well, odds are the answer to that is always yes, given the fact that they have hundreds of little and dozens of large algorithmic updates every year. You're always either in the middle of one or just past one or staring one down in the face. So there's that. And most of the time there's not going to be a major impact on traffic from that, but sometimes there is. The other thing is, we make tons of recommendations to clients, and a great deal of the success has to do with the schedule with which they are able to make those changes. We don't take control of their sites. We run everything through their own IT department or their web dev team via the marketing team usually, and it can sit in a queue for a while. So when we're asked, well, if we do all this stuff, what's going to happen? We can make projections based on loose data that we know, but a lot of it is, the question's almost irrelevant because there are so many variables that we don't control. But given that, you might be in a position where you absolutely are forced. Tell me what this is going to do, because budgets are tight. Departments are being asked to justify expenditures based on predicted return. So how do you predict return? Well, one of the things you can do is extrapolate your traffic gains by the prediction of the ranking that you think you're going to have. For example, you're ranked number 3 or number 4 for various terms, and you look at the demand based on those, and you say, okay, well, Google says that there are 50,000 people searching for this a month. We are ranked number 4 for that. We are getting 270 per month. Now, in addition to this, what you need to add is a study of where the clicks go. For example, just yesterday afternoon, Bing released a study that said 50% of all clicks go to their number 1 organic ranking site. If they have deep links or site links under that, that number increases to 75% go to that domain. So there are new studies about this probably every 6 months, and it's so dependent on the situation. If you have 3 premium PPC ads on the top of a page, you're not going to get that high of a click rate in organic. But for the long tail stuff, maybe no one's bidding on it, so all the clicks are going to go to organic. So you have to look at the, for example, one thing you should do is take something that you're ranked number 1 for and look at the demand for that, either in the AdWords tool or a relative demand by something like Google Insights, and say, okay, at number 1, I'm getting this. And do the same thing with things you rank number 2, number 3, number 4 for, so you can determine sort of your own click-through rate for various things you are ranking for. All right, so if you have keyword targets that you're shooting for, you can just cautiously say, well, we're not going to do real well for a while. We might come in. There's not a whole lot of competition. We're building up a lot of content about it. We think we can, in 3 or 4 months, we can rank number 4 or number 5 for that. So you look at the demand for that, and you can extrapolate. You can say, well, if I'm getting X visits on this term and it has Y demand, well, I can probably at the same rate get the same percentage of clicks, and it has Z demand, and I can get W amount of clicks. So it's a really difficult manual process, and it does not account for the long tail, but we typically don't account much for the long tail in these projections just because we want to be very cautious. We'd rather say, well, we think we can increase traffic here by 15%, and then it goes to 25%, as opposed to saying, well, we're pretty sure we can bump traffic up to 30%, and then it's only 25%, because then we've overpromised and underdelivered. The next thing I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about the third item here, which is watch your previous gains based on past content addition. If you're doing content build out, content marketing, sort of a catchphrase. I mean, really building a site is content marketing, and it always has been. You can see that when you add new pages, new posts, new articles, a lot of times there's a little bit of a spike followed by a decline followed by a leveling off. Okay, and if you're adding new content all the time, ideally, a lot of those are going to see the same effect. So you have a lot of little mountains followed by a lot of leveling off. And if you have enough pages that are leveling off, you can sort of aggregate that data, see over time how much a good addition of content has added to the performance of your site, and then you can say, okay, well, we plan to do 7 more content initiatives by the end of the calendar year based on past results. Here's what we think is going to happen with that. So that, basing your own predictions based on your own past data is a much more reliable way to do it. Now, the third thing I want to talk about is watching your demand trends, and that has to do with the process of actually pursuing the keyword targets and deciding on the keyword targets that you're going for. Kayla, if you would move to the next page. For example, okay, we're doing this medical site. We have a lot of cancer information. We don't want to flood this page with terms. PPC-wise, we're going to go for both of these probably, but on the organic side, we're going to go with one or the other. Which should we go with? Skin cancer symptoms, melanoma symptoms. Okay, well, we're going to pull the AdWords tool data like we've done here. We're not going to look at the global monthly searches because we're really, for our business, we're looking more at a domestic audience. So the local monthly searches, that looks about the same. It looks like skin cancer symptoms might have a little leg up there, maybe 15% higher than the melanoma symptoms. Okay, so if we use that data, we get one picture. But if you'll show the next slide, we have to look at a lot of different pictures. Okay, in the previous slide, we saw that skin cancer symptoms here, which is in blue, did look a little higher, but that's a lot of historical data aggregated. We can see here that over the past 3 years, melanoma symptoms has gone from probably half as popular to now as popular. So if we continue this trend line out, if we're talking about the next 24 months, 36 months, my money's going to go on melanoma symptoms because apparently, the audience to that is more clinically focused. More people know the correlation between skin cancer and melanoma. More people are calling it that. So if we just went by the previous slide's data, we wouldn't necessarily have the full picture. When I look at keyword demand data, it's almost like I don't really care about the last 12 months so much. I'm almost sometimes more interested in looking at the extremes. What's happened over the last 30 days and what's happened over the last 6 years? Because from those two pictures, I can get a look at really where I want to take something and not be swayed by just the one facet like we were with the AdWords tool there. So looking at stuff long term and in short term, you got to aggregate those perspectives to really understand how to build out your content. And with that, you could say, well, okay, what we're also predicting is that 12 months from now, this is growing at a rate of maybe 25% a year. If we can start to rank for this stuff now, a rank of number 2 now is going to be worth even more, even if we're not number 1. We're just going to grow based on the volume of people who are increasingly searching for this stuff. So those are additional factors that I think is really important to build into your keyword discovery, your content build-outs, and so on. Okay, so as we sort of combine and get these two evil twins back on the same page here, where do PPC and SEO come into the whole picture? Now, this is an omniture graph. Again, looking at search, that's a little bit more than 50%. The direct is huge. It's over a third. The direct, the other websites, you have about 12% there, and then your social networks. Where do PPC and SEO come in? Well, it seems like 5 or 6 years ago, all the various online marketing channels, whether SEO or PPC or at that point, nascent social media scene or direct, affiliate links or things like that, they were all sort of almost adversarial, at least sort of co-opetition-like, if you'll let me throw a buzzword in there. Today it's a lot different, and that has a lot to do with cross-channel attribution that a lot of analytics packages are featuring now, and that a lot of smart marketing managers are looking at. We know, for example, that if a certain percentage of people come in through an organic click, well, they will probably revisit it, maybe with a PPC click later, and that's eventually going to drive them to some social media content, which may eventually result in a sale once they become, enough of a fan of the brand. So in the past, where maybe the tweet or the Facebook post would take all the credit for that sale, we now know how much these various channels need to rely on each other. So what we recommend is not say, I want search to take a bigger piece of this pie next year. I want it to be 75. I want it to be 80% of that. I don't necessarily think that's a smart idea, even though I'm biased towards search. I think you need to find an optimal balance for your particular business of how these channels work together, and then build all of them up. So maybe we decide, okay, we think PPC ought to be 20%. We think organic ought to be 25%. We think social should be 30%. Once you've sort of arrived at those numbers, you don't necessarily have to increase one channel's slice of that pie anymore to win. What you need to do is increase everyone so that the ratio stays the same, but the traffic and the sales and the performance grows overall. Now, finding that balance is tricky. It's precarious, and it's sort of a work in progress for everybody, including the agencies. But overall, I think you significantly increase one channel's performance at the potential harm of other channels. Again, we're not saying that goals aren't important. If you have a goal of moving one channel from 20 to 25%, absolutely do that. But just watch overall to make sure that they're still sort of operating in harmony together. So that's sort of a vague mission for you, but it's where we're going. We don't, we think if 100% of your traffic comes from SEO, you're doing something wrong. It looks great for us, but overall, it's not a good place for you to be. So, Kayla, I don't know if you want to add on to that or just take us into the next slide, but I'll throw it back over to you.
Yeah, no, I think just a huge ditto on really that entire sentiment is really the key. I have seen situations where, there's one particular area of the marketing scheme that's built up to a place where, it does begin to pull a little bit of budget over from, maybe a previous more traditional method. So, specifically, I think we see a lot of this with the search and internet marketing segments pulling from, not so many magazine advertisements and not so much direct mail. So from that aspect, I think that it's really important to consider how much those traditional methods versus a more online marketing scheme, how those work for you. But I agree completely that it should never be build one up to ignore another. Build them all up as much as you possibly can and realize the point at which the return stops coming back for you, and level things out and try to keep it there as long as possible. So absolutely agree, and definitely keep all those things in mind. How they work together is incredibly important. So the last thing you want to do is peel one out and find out that it was maybe feeding one of the ones that you thought was doing really well. So absolutely fantastic job, Eric. Thank you. So that really wraps up the full presentation for April. We do have some time for questions here in just a second, but as an overall wrap of the entire presentation today, we just want to make sure that everybody's aware there are definitely some metrics that you're tracking now that are going to need some long-term tracking as well. So you can't just look at them week to week or month to month. You need to look at them, from last year into next year as well. You can then take, those short and long-term data points and project where your accounts may continue to go in the future, if you can continue moving at that same pace. And then, of course, don't forget, what those other pieces of the marketing picture and puzzle are going to be, that how they fit together for your brand, where you need to give one more love and potentially use one to fund another. So keeping all of that in mind is incredibly crucial. So really quick announcement before we get on to the questions portion. Eric himself and then Hennepin's own Director of Paid Search, Jeff Allen, are going to be speaking at SMS Advanced in Seattle in June. So both their sessions are actually on day one. They're both on June 11th, and I think they may be happening at the same time. So that could be fun. But in case you missed one, definitely make sure you grab whoever's presentation you missed afterwards and catch up with them. I know they'll both be around networking and such, so give them a shout and say hello. All right, so we've definitely got some questions and we've got time for them as well. So we've got a couple that came direct through the chat, so we also had a couple from Twitter. So Eric, if it's okay with you, I'll just read the questions, and I think quite a few of them are actually directly for SEO. So if that's all right with you, we'll go with it.
Sure. Yeah,
Cool.
let's do it.
Awesome. So the first one is, my direct traffic is an average 48%. How can you check possible issues for this high number? It says I tag all email and social links.
All email and social links, and it's 48%. Wow. You know, it might sound extreme, but I almost might recommend sort of a polling system where, you know, how when you're redesigning your site, you'll see these, hey, how do you like our site? Can you answer a question? Maybe just an interstitial and say, you know, only when they arrive from, you know, if you can configure the server to sniff when they're not coming from a referred source, say, hey, I'd love to know how you got here, and, you know, give them, you know, 4 options. Facebook pass along, somebody sent it to me, typed it in, bookmarked, or, you know, none of your business, you know, and just try to get a handle on that. So if all email and social things are tagged, first look at where they're landing. Segment your traffic so that you're looking only at direct traffic, and then look at the landing pages and see if you can get some indication from that. If they're coming right to the home page, maybe it is typed and maybe it is bookmarked. If they're landing somewhere deeper, then there's such a smaller chance that it's bookmarked, especially if it's fairly new content. So look where they're landing and think about a poll or some other mechanism where you can get them to tell you where that's coming from, because that's a really high percentage, especially when you are tagging everything. So yeah, I guess number one, look at where they're landing when they're coming from no particular source.
That's a great point. This seems like it's a possible follow-up question as well. It says, what's the most efficient method to add a tag?
To add a tag, we just use the UTM_medium tag, and, you know, I might throw this back to you because we're, you know, on the organic side, we're a lot less proficient at tagging than you. But for example, even for this webinar, we want to know, hey, we want to know how can we build this audience, how can we do this right? So we tag different, you know, whether we're sending out email blast or a blog post or a Facebook post. The UTM, which stands for Urchin Tracking Mode, which is an old analytics thing, but in case you want to look it up on Google or something, we just assign a medium to it, whether it's FB or TW or email or G+ or something like that. So that's how, I mean, and the thing is that a lot of people don't know, if you go to your own site and just add at the end of it, if it's already a static URL, just put $UTM_medium equals Facebook, and you can send that URL out. You don't have to create new URLs or anything. That will resolve. And if you already have a dynamic URL, just add one more parameter and value to it, like the UTM medium. And you can send those out, and you can start tracking them right away. But for more advanced tagging, Kayla, what do you recommend?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of very specific tagging methods that, on, you know, a per client basis, the ones that really get complicated are usually because their back-end system and the way it's configured, and we have to track back not just to, you know, a lead or a sale level. It's the deeper metrics. It's the, you know, lifetime value numbers. It's the lead to enrollment for EDU accounts. That's when that deep sort of, I think a quote-unquote efficient method is going to come into play, is in those situations. In terms of just general tagging, you know, within the interfaces itself, I guarantee pretty much there's an auto tagging option that helps you build these, and then you just copy paste them right back out. So you know, using analytics, we use Acton here at Hannafin, and we can attribute a lot of those. We can assign those tags right within the interface. So it certainly depends on, again, like Eric said, some of them you can sort of fake and track them that way. So it's definitely very dependent. And I would say if you perceive that you've got a really in-depth tagging situation on your hands, it may be a good situation to just get a consultant on board, because the only thing that's worse than tagging that takes a long time is tagging that was quick and turns out to be wrong, or tagging that took a long time and is still wrong. So I think you're doing yourself a favor to potentially invest either a little bit of time or get a consultant to come and assist if you think it's more difficult than just the the UTM medium methods.
Very good.
Awesome. Eric, I think one more SEO specific question, and then we've got a couple more that are a bit more general.
Okay.
So for SEO, the question is, are you using exact match?
Exact versus broad match. For the AdWords tool slide that I used, where I believe it was skin cancer symptoms versus melanoma symptoms, I used broad match there, which in case you're not familiar, just means sort of those terms and other terms similar to that, other terms that might contain those. So for that one, I did. The exact match numbers are fairly similar. It was like 9,900 versus 8,100 instead of 22,000 versus 18,000. Honestly, I spend less time in AdWords tool than I do in Google Trends, which used to be Google Insights for search. I spend probably 90% of my keyword research time in Google Trends, which is the longer red and blue graph that I showed, and that does not give you the option of broad versus exact. So I sort of take those. When I see values in Google Trends, I take that to sort of be an amalgam between broad and exact, meaning that the graph itself is probably an exact match, but at the same time, the topics probably have peripheral terms that rise and fall similarly. So I hope that's helpful. I did use broad on the slide that I showed, but most of the time I'm not even in the AdWords tool.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right, so now we've got some more generalized questions, so I'll take the heat off you for a second. The first one is, what's your biggest, remember these are projections, paranoia? I'm going to assume that's referring to, kind of like when you do projections and then you sit back and look at them, what's the thing that makes you hesitant to really believe that they're true? And my biggest one is definitely, what the search engines themselves have planned that we certainly aren't privy to as soon as they are, and maybe some of us not privy to until it's rolled out live. So, Hennepin is very blessed to be pretty closely tied to both our Bing and Google teams. So we're given a lot of advance notice for things that could potentially be difficult, but that still doesn't mean we're given, an ample amount of time necessarily to make those necessary changes. And, you can never really know if those are going to be good or bad for your individual account, for your overall total client load. It's definitely usually something you just got to wait until you see how it rolls out and respond accordingly. So anytime I'm looking at projections, I try to keep in mind that, and especially if I've ever presented them to a client, that's a huge time to make sure that they're aware, like, listen, there are 7 points of these 10 that are within my control, and as long as they stay stable, this should be the right numbers. But you've always got to keep in mind we're still puppets to a certain degree, so we've just got to wait and see what the engines are going to be up to. Eric, do you have a response to that may be different?
Yeah, I don't have a single biggest paranoid fear. I have a lot of little ones, I guess. Like, definitely one is what's going to change in the algorithm that I don't know about 6 months from now. That's not a huge fear for us, honestly, because we're not out there, we're not trying to trick anything. We're not trying to exploit any algorithmic loopholes. We're just out there trying to research content and see how it can best relate to what people are asking and make sure that it gets crawled and indexed properly. That's sort of there's not a lot of sizzle to that, but that's how we approach it. So, typically, we don't get affected negatively by panda and penguin stuff, but at the same time, you can have you can you can have algorithm changes that sort of level out changes that you've seen before. We have one client, at least that I know of, that really benefited from Panda updates, just because it was really filtering out so much of the junk that they competed with, and so they benefited from that. But then when things slow down, you'll see traffic level off or even decline, and you think, well, are we doing something wrong? And really we're not. We're just that's sort of the pendulum swinging back from all the gains that you've seen for so long. So that can happen. I worry sometimes about what happened on a client's site before we got there. What sort of endeavors did they do when the guy's brother-in-law was running SEO? That stuff worries me sometimes, because we do a pretty thorough audit up front, but you can't, sometimes some things that happened, years ago come back to bite you. I guess the third and final thing that I'll say is, what is the process for getting our recommendations made? Do they go and sit on someone's desk for 90 days, and then after 90 days they're saying, well, our SEO campaign really hasn't done much, and we say, well, you know what, that's because nothing that we recommended has actually been implemented. So that's a source of frustration, and we're a lot better at ruling that out up in the qualifying stage. That's one of the prerequisites. If we're going to work together, we have to be trusted enough that you're going to do what we recommend. So I guess those are the three that sort of combine to wake me up now and then at night.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Well, I think we're just about out of time, so we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Want to make sure everybody knows that, as with all months previous, we're both offering some sort of special offers for the attendees for the webinars. You can sign up for a Google Webmaster Tools audit with the Enter Promote team at that first URL there. And then if you're spending, at least $15,000 a month or so via Google, Bing, or a combination of the two, we can get you a solutions blueprint from myself and the team over here at Hannafin. That's at the second URL. And then, of course, if you guys think of any questions afterwards that you want to ask of Eric and I, or if you've got, PPC SEO topics that you'd really like to see us cover in the future, certainly feel free to shoot us an email, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So thanks, everybody, for another great month, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone, and thank you, Kayla.